Well, welcome anyone and everyone who's looking to solve, I guess, just a bit of a headache that's recurring these days with Microsoft changing their costings and pricings and just the many layers of complexity that exist in that right now. It's pretty topical based on majority of MSPs were faced with a price increase this in July, so last month. So we want to dive into sort of some of the lessons and learnings we've been picking up in our journey in the MSP space. So my name's Adam. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called CloudOlive, and we're very deep in this area, and I guess that's why so many of our partners have been asking this question of how we can potentially help them in this problem area. We interface with the PSAs, especially around recurring billing and line up invoices from suppliers at the crux of what we try to solve. So it's right smack bang in the wheelhouse and bullseye area of what we focus on. And perhaps I'll let James introduce yourself, mate, for those who perhaps aren't unaware of you. Might be a couple on the planet, maybe.
They're the fortunate ones that don't have to see my face on LinkedIn all the time. It's James Davis. I'm from the TSP Advisory, and I've been coaching, consulting, advising tech partners for the last nearly 10 years now. This is why I've got all the white in my beard. Me and Adam have done a lot over the past, and I think this is it's a good time to start talking about this topic again because the complexity is ramping up, and in Microsoft, in of itself, is a major revenue line for a lot of partners that keeps growing as they're adding more stuff. So these price rises have sparked a lot of interesting conversations with partners, and it seems to be a recurring thing that doesn't go away in the industry.
Yeah, and I'll maybe just come away from that. We can just chat through it. We do have a couple of slides and stuff later on, but we can if we need to look at them, we can. But I'd say that the most common question we were urgently getting asked over the last couple of weeks or months or so was, we've got these price rises coming. We know that they're coming. I don't even know where to start as an MSP, right? They're the ones asking us these questions. What we've noticed, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever it is, like we've been able to help find it, is the price increase. Like we've had some examples where there's been 30 or 40 grand of missed costs in not just this price increase not going in properly as yet, but actually the price increases have been creeping up on MSPs over the past couple of years, really. NC is probably 5 years old now and been incrementally getting a little bit more complex, and they've been moving the goalposts, et cetera, always up. But almost like the key variable that we've started to just, like, if we can solve one thing, it is, does your sell price in your PSA match the RRP? Like, we'll look at costs and stuff after the fact. How far off are those two numbers from each other? Because at least if you get the revenue side okay, you can backfill on the cost reporting piece. And it's a really tricky problem, is what we've seen in reality.
It's a massive problem. We've been talking for like 6 years about this sort of problem in general, and a lot of the industry still hasn't solved it. And there's a few reasons. One of it's, I think, mindset. A lot of partners bundle everything into one sort of magic bundle that they sell to their clients, and they've got no way to pull any levers. It's very opaque. That creates a lot of challenges. The mindset of not doing price rises at all and being too confrontational, and they're worried about losing clients, stops them from taking a lot of action. That's the PSA setup in general. There's best practices of how to do it, and it's we add layer upon layer without actually stopping to fundamentally fix the architecture of how we're doing our recurring agreements. And then these things, even if we've got the want, even if we can drive that price rise simply, it becomes really difficult in the PSA because we've got random agreement structures, random agreement and contract structures, got misaligned SKUs, and all of a sudden what could be actually a very simple thing turns into major headache, and then we've got other things on the boil, so we put that into hard basket, and this is how we go. Those compounding issues just keep getting worse year on year on year.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about the bundle complexity forever, and it's not really ever been. So there's pros and cons to doing it, right? And the pro is we have one line the customer sees. We just need to reconcile one count and they pay. Simpler, all good, everyone's happy. The internal quality control, like ability to check on that, becomes a lot harder if it is truly one line, especially if there's naturally different counts across different suppliers. And that just renders cost reporting impossible at that point. So definitely breaking things apart in the PSA is the only way that you can move towards really good reporting, if that's important to you. And for those who, I worked at Auditask for nearly 10 years, and that it was a very common problem. This is talking like 2011 and on, right? So even back at that time when it was subscription economy was becoming the norm, it was at that time that people were starting to try and roll these things together and all the rest of it. Yep. So it's been going on for a really long time. A thing that we generally note, if there's a bundle of sorts and Microsoft is included in that bundle, there's a couple of problems that will always arise a couple of months down the line. There's an upgrade of one of those users to a new thing. What do you do? It becomes a tricky issue. And yeah, always trying to break things apart. The other piece, I think that like we'll talk about, I think, quite a few almost tactical realities that MSPs are facing right now, some strategic, but some of the tactical things that we've seen firsthand is like distributors were doing the right thing and giving the new price list at the end of June, thinking, hey guys, update your PSA, you guys get ahead of it. And then the MSPs are like, hang on a second, this customer's on this commit until the end of this year. So actually we can't update that. So we can't bulk do this thing. Which is again why for us the invoice from the supplier, the disty, whoever that is, Paxate, Ingram, whoever, it's really that. Hopefully they've got that data. Some disties do not, and it's just your costs. And we can talk to how you can sort of think about solving the problem accurately when you've got customers on a variety of different commits throughout the year. But if the RRP is in the file, then a tool like CloudOlive can go, here's where it doesn't match. Here's the impact of making that change before you make that change, because you may want to go and speak to the customer if it's a wild uplift. Like we saw one yesterday as a big Power BI premium user, 200 odd users, and their buy price was, their sell price was actually below their buy price, and they had 200 plus licenses of it. So it was about a $2,000 increase in margin revenue, whatever you call it, right? It's just in the company that it wasn't currently there, purely down to the RRP being off. It's those little things that invoice is king in that, or we're meant to make 16 or 17%. Again, tell me if that's no longer in alignment with that line by line.
It's I think a lot of the fundamental challenges is most of us don't understand procurement in general, let alone subscription procurement. And that flows onto a lot of these challenges where that thought process around we bundle everything. There's a mentality of sales that we're not strong on from sales to sell the value, or we're presenting it one way and we think the invoice needs to reflect what we presented at the high level to the decision maker compared to what goes through to the finance admin. And we've never stopped to like architect what that system looks like. What you mentioned back in 2011, that's when I started in the industry. It's really simple. We sold a managed service per device, and we resold Office 365 at the time. We had inside the managed service, there was an antivirus, there was a RMM, and there was anti-spam. Like we're dealing with like 4 subscription products. And so that was really easy just to bolt on to what we've done. But now what is it, about 20 odd subscriptions that we're typically selling to our clients on average? that complexity is ramped up, and because we haven't fundamentally understood the flows end to end of us selling something to a client, us purchasing and us reselling, and how do we manage those steps, it all gets out of whack really quickly, like we're talking about. A lot of this it's not really big strategic conversations. It is like get the framework right, and there's really lining up the tactical stuff inside that framework. We sell too many things in too many different ways, and then we try and be creative on having too many terms. Like Microsoft's is a great example. There's annual, monthly, and you sell all of those different things. All of a sudden, your contracts and stuff need to be different, but we don't fit that into that sort of framework and structure of the good architecture. So we're trying to do it all the one way, and that's when it starts unraveling, because it creates a lot of complexity that doesn't actually need to be there. It's already complex enough and a lot of moving parts, but we get too creative in the way that we think and the way we try and engineer these things, instead of going, there's only certain ways that we can purchase it and it gets billed, and there's only actually certain ways that we should be selling this. It becomes a lot more simplified in that way, especially when, I'm very against the bundling for the reporting internal reason, but also transparency with the clients. But these are the sort of decisions we haven't made deliberately. We've been making them on the fly, and we actually never just stop to re-architect this thing. And that's how we keep leaking revenue everywhere.
Yeah, the general is simplest. If you even there's how you buy and how you sell and how you set up the PSA, and how you set up the PSA, in my mind, should mirror whatever you purchase. Like very vanilla, very simple. If it's a blue service there, it should be a blue service here. The counts, the cost, everything should marry up. Whether you choose to roll it up and show or not show the client, that's sort of the way you sell, the way your prerogative, and just little features and things inside the PSAs, they all do it. But at least having that in place gives an opportunity to get perfect reporting for starters. But coming to that point on annual, monthly, annual, a lot of our clients say buy from a Pax8 or another distributor that might have some third-party integration that updates the contracts in the background or the agreements in the background each night. And one of the just interesting observations that CloudOlive picks up every single month is if you're buying if a single end client has both a premium monthly and a premium monthly annual, as an example, the inherent underlying code of that is identical in the Pax8 world, or they're all the same. Ripe, Ingram, they've picked a singular code, and the integration literally picks up. It goes, I'm going to try and help you. I assume you want it to go to this one here, and it picks whatever was last defined at that product level, which naturally brings in a real scenario all the time where you're buying a monthly and you're selling it as a yearly, and 10 and 10 line up. Oh, here's your buddy.
He's excited about this Microsoft talk.
Yeah, where's mine? He's asleep on the couch. Just lost my trail of thought there, but being able to double check, because this is you can run for months or years with looking like it's perfect. You've got an integration on in the background. You're on billing it. It looks perfect. It looks spot on. It's impossible for a human to see it at a glance, but it's part of why having one really clearly defined and structured naming conventions in the PSA, to me, is still the number one most important decision you can make. And then having a way to double check it. Again, we've learned that we need to be able to flag that pretty readily for users, because it's such a common challenge. But it just hits on how easy it is to have all of your margin wiped out. Because the wild thing, right, if you're on 16, 17% margin, roughly around that, every month of Microsoft that you miss a complete bill on, which everyone here I'm sure had that example, it's 6 months of your margins wiped out. So 2 months is your year done. So you shouldn't have been reselling that thing. It's a real issue. Can be.
Well, it is for most partners. That's the thing, isn't it? It's and the fact that it's such we just pick on Microsoft as our conversation line. It's a significant portion of the monthly revenue for a lot of people. Like
it's only the monthly cost for sure. 6 to 8 generally. Yep.
It's that's when we're running as an industry around 6% EBITDA as an industry average. That's a significant impact to our businesses that a lot of us just aren't looking at. And whether it's the too hard basket, whether it's the unknown, like you just don't know these things because you're not looking at it in detail, or even when a lot of partners do go and look at this, it's usually thrown at the finance department. Finance department doesn't actually understand a lot of this, and they can't get help internally. Is often what I find. Like when I'm coming into partners and work with them over the years, finance knows that a problem. They don't know. They're not technically savvy enough to understand the PSA. They don't understand all the integrations to our disties and all of that kind of stuff. Half the time they don't even know what the products are, and they ask for help from the technical side, and the technical side can't give them what they're looking for, and so it just keeps sitting there, and there's no action being taken. And like you said, you miss 1 month of billing for this stuff, it adds up really quickly of lost margin.
Yeah, definitely. And the disty's never going to they might misbill you, but they're never going to underbill you. So it's always the MSP sort of sandwiched in the middle, trying to solve this complexity. And one of a question that's worthwhile just thinking about as an MSP is like, how accurate do we think we are? Like, is it 100%? So there's nothing up and there's no unders, there's no overs. It's rock solid, which would be amazing, right? And then we go, how do you know that? But still, let's say that you're super confident. That's great. And then you go, well, maybe we're at 95%. 95%. So there's a 5% variance that could be in our favor, it could not be in our favor. And if it's in your favor and the customer sees it, that's a problem, right? You need to make good on that. But if you're doing 100 grand, just keep it simple numbers. If you're doing 100 grand of revenue, if you will, around these services-based recurring services, and it's a 5%, whatever your number is, it's like, that's $5,000. $5,000. And if you're up and your customer is technically down in that equation, then it's a matter of time until they like just ask or figure it out for themselves. And that's a big. And then it moves from 5% to 10 or 15% potentially.
Yeah.
You know?
And this it really adds up. And like as you're saying, 95%, I'm thinking, that's actually that's pretty high accuracy for the industry. So that gets quite scary because I reckon it's gotten worse. I remember us speaking a few years ago where we both agreed it was probably around 7% revenue leakage each month. I reckon it's gone up. I reckon it's closer to even pushing 10% for a lot of partners these days because it's just the amount of subscriptions in general, and the complexity's gone up, and we haven't stopped to fix this. And I think a lot of it's that mindset of most partners are reluctant subscription providers.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil.
And we don't see it as a major business line. Yep. We don't treat it as an actual revenue profit center and align how we would other practices to other areas. This is just, we do it, it's just a secondary thing we do. But if you're doing like 100K in Microsoft licensing, just as an example, that is often a significant portion of the business, and we just don't treat it that way. And I think we need to really start doing that because clients actually want us to be the subscription providers. They want that centralized bill. They want one technology partner that they're working with that they can get all their technology from, and they're only going to expand the SaaS subscription base. It's like something like the average sort of small business that's been running for over 3 years often has like 60 different SaaS subscriptions.
Yeah.
So why are we not like jumping on board to help them manage those expenses and then capture all this margin when all of us are struggling with profitability and growth? It just doesn't line up. But I think we're just stuck in that old break fix mindset.
I think it is that, but also vendors have been moving the goalposts as well. Like Kaseya's probably the second biggest cost line from us generally, right? Disty and then them. And like they've moved towards bundling of packages as well, and then on the invoice not showing what's part of that bundle. So there's a 2-layer complexity to it. That is, one, are we billing the right thing? Which is sort of where we've spent as a company, CloudOlive, a really long time trying to help solve that problem. To the MSP, it's an extra layer. It's like, have I deployed that part of the bundle? Yes or no? And some vendors, Kaseya's a standout in like just how tricky that actually is. And it makes sense. Like they bought 500 companies, right? And they've sort of blended them all together. They're still individual companies at the core. And they're trying their best to centralize an invoice, but the enough data is not getting displayed to truly know, okay, I'm billing the right count. Have we actually deployed that EDR solution to that end client? They're paying for it. I don't know. I don't know from that report. I need to go elsewhere and try and find it. And that thing just takes a long time. A lot of work.
It's a good point. If we bring it back to Microsoft, it's the same sort of thing around our contract terms. They've got licenses, but it doesn't match up to the users that they've actually got. There's a lot of system administration in a lot of this, and it isn't just the finance and billing side and the sales side. It is our operations, and our operations don't have the level of governance and compliance around that deployment side, and we don't provide enough transparency to our clients for them to help themselves either. That's what you said about Kaseya. We basically do the same thing to our clients.
Yeah,
and it just passes down. So there's a bit of a mindset shift that we need to take as an industry, because this isn't going away. There's only going to be more and more of this.
So a question arose. Funny you mentioned about annuals. I was just about to touch on that as a should have been people were like, oh, let's just move them to annual, because if they go out of business, we as the MSP are not on the hook. It's easier. We get all the money up front. Don't know how we allocate it, even though that's a different internal reporting question. But the issue that was just raised there, which is a real one, is we buy 10 annuals in January. Then in the July invoice, they move to 11, but the invoice only states 1. What do we do? It actually depends a little bit on which PSA you're using. We work very heavily with Autotask and ConnectWise, and one of the real big things with Autotask that we learned, I didn't know this up until about 6 months ago, but it is so crucial in Autotask. It is so rigid in this part of the system that you have to have an annual contract start at the day that the annual subscription started. If you do that and then move from 10 to 11 in July, it's good. It moves and does everything on your behalf. If it is any other day of the year, so if you were to put a yearly service on a monthly contract that was just floating around because it's already on the customer, the numbers will never line up ever. And you will end up buying something for a year and then selling it for basically a few months or 6 months, whatever the term left, the anniversary of that monthly contract that we just talked about. It's so like you have to just, it is what it is. For annuals, you have to have that set up in Autotask, starting the contract at the right time. If you've not done that, it'll run into issues. And one of the things that we've started to, we unfortunately learned it with a client, and things were just showing up as red, and we're like, why is that? The counts line up. And then that's where we learned, we double checked and stuff with some consultants, and they agreed with it. You have to break those things apart. With ConnectWise, we now generally from the district, if we're responsible, CloudOlive, for doing the updates back into the PSA, we now break apart prorates into its own world, annuals into its own vendor. So you'll have like Microsoft annual, whichever DC you buy from, and it's like isolate those things because you don't want to get it wrong. And then we actually do, it's our responsibility to create those lines with the RRP, with everything already set, and you're good. You can just move on with that.
It is a complex space. Like we just broke it down there. We need to know this stuff. And like there are some business decisions to make there of going, are we doing annuals? And if we are, then this is the level of detail we need to go to make it work. Let alone you said it, how you actually realize that and report on it inside our financials and stuff. There's a lot of things to go behind that. But it goes back to a lot of partners when it changed over the NCE. They all went annual, monthly, and they were all holding the bag. And That was a really bad business decision because we don't think these things through enough. We just rush to trying to oversimplify things that we don't understand. A lot of what we're talking about, and I'll probably sound a bit nonchalant in this because we're probably like you, we've done it we know what good looks like. We know how to do this stuff, and it is simple once you sort of know all of that. But you can't simplify what you don't understand. And a lot of these decisions we make, the annual monthlies, the bundling of M365 thing into our contracted managed services for a year, and we can't do a price rise because we haven't put that in our contract. All these little things are death by 1,000 cuts. And we need, as a partner, you need to step back and take a breath and look at it holistically rather than try and make all these tactical decisions. There's a lot of tactical decisions you need to make to understand to be able to make these bigger decisions, and then how does everything flow?
Yeah.
So I just think that's where most partners get stuck. They just go to dealing with the tactical symptoms rather than thinking about, let's understand how this all goes, and then let's how to structure this properly. And then a lot of problems will go away. It's not saying that you won't have any problems, because you will. That's unfortunately the nature of all of this. You'll have far less problems every month.
Yeah. So we got a question from John around aligning to RRP is one thing, but then there's additional discounts that apply at the end of it, and it currently is quite manual. I'd say that there's one client in particular here in Australia that comes to mind that's got quite a large Microsoft stack that has that same like requirement, either 0.95, like a 5%, or I think it's like a 3% for other clients for different reasons. What we did with them was we ended up having a static table of customer A equals X amount, and then customer B. So when it sees it month on month, it takes the RRP and does that relevant calculation. The only downside not even downside, you just need to manage that static table of list. But we've essentially in CloudOlive got the flexibility of Excel at our fingertips to be able to do these sort of things, and then map it back to the relevant line items inside of the PSA. That's how we've solved it specifically for them for over the past 12 months. Been working with them, so even longer, and that is working really, really well for them. If you're able to do that calculation yourself repeatedly in say in Excel, or you've got a process for it, that's the sort of stuff that can be baked into CloudOlive and just remembered. That's the sort of where we shine those sort of edge cases. So I don't know if that answers your question, John, but certainly around AT and ConnectWise and soon Halo in the next couple of, probably later this quarter, they're all going to be supported for that type of query or complexity. And then question from Anne, the billing period. This is always a great question, I think. Billing period, what should we use? Supplier, actual day of order, or to suit PSA? I'd say that there's certain variables in that equation that are fixed. So one would be, like, let's just take Paxate as an example, and you can do it for any of the other distributors out there, but their invoice arrives to you about today, 6th of the month, 5th, 6th of the month, depending on where you're based. And it's for up to the end of last month. period, full stop. That is a bookend in that equation that is fixed, and there's not a lot you can do around it. You want to work off of the invoice, because if there's any errors that crept in or anything, that's the amount of money that's going to leave your bank. So that has to be a source, like a key part of the entire calculation. So if you take that as a variable, I've actually got a thing that here's one I made earlier. Let me just see if where did I put it? So window.
As you're opening that, I think again we get a little too creative with our billing. Like what you said, there's a few hooks here that happens that they're your anchors that revolve around everything, and until you work out those anchors, like you're showing up on the screen, you're just getting too creative. We've got a problem in our industry where we need to feel like we're doing something special, but we do things special in the wrong areas. Invoicing is not the place to try and be unique and different and special, because vendors, disties, all run by a certain way. We're sort of beholden to how they do it, and we need to structure around it, which I think, as you show through the graphic, this is going to show those sort of decision points of what to anchor yourself on.
Yeah, unfortunately, part of it is who you buy from and who you work with, and then you'll go, well, one of our invoices arrives on the 28th of the month, or Kaseya's on the 6th, or whoever, and if you choose to invoice your clients ahead of that time, you just can't use that as a data set, which a lot of MSPs do. So this is a really common example that on the first of the month, the PSA is set to bill the end client, and then 6 days later, the invoices start to drop in. So then you go, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? We obviously can't use that data set to invoice out to our customers. So it's like, all right, let's in that point do a point in time report and sanity check it, or you just blindly trust the integration in the background that it's done its job, right? They're basically your options with this timings. And I think a lot of when we ask these questions, it goes, okay, you want to bill on the first, that's fine. A lot of our clients do. It's like, what are your terms with your end client? And they're like 30 days or whatever it might be. Okay. One thing just to consider with this is if the goal is to capture costs and revenue within the same month, and hopefully you got good payment terms with some of your distributors, so your clients have certainly already paid you by the time you're having to fork out for the distributor in particular, like your heaviest cost. One example would be like billing a little bit later on in the month. So if you bill out, say, on the 10th or the 14th, I've just done 14th here, right? It's smack bang in the middle of the month, and a 14-day payment term on top of it still arrives with money coming into the bank earlier than common scenario one. And if there's like some smaller vendors kicking around out there, like it may not be, and they don't move that much, it might not be as big of a deal in this whole equation. Maybe you either just bill last month's or bill whatever's there at the moment in time, and you choose to prorate backwards or not, meaning credits or like they've increased, so you back bill them. Completely up to you how you do that. This is just a scenario that at least allows you to go, okay, we've got the main cost from our supplier now, and let's do our checks and balances to make sure that it's all aligned. All of our costs line up in the PSA, everything's tracked, blah, blah, blah. It's the only way that you can truly, and the benefit of that is you're reconciling one data set to both invoice out and reconcile down all of your costs. And if your payment, like it's just thinking about it, we still achieve all the revenue and everything. Like we can still close out the month in the same way. There's less stress on the team, most likely, if you're like rushing a million miles an hour to try and get everything done on the first when there's no data to really use. So you have to pull it from areas or rely on APIs. It's just having to think about what would something like this actually make it a lot more streamlined for our MSP. And one of the other points, I reckon about 25-30% of our clients don't prorate things on and off all the time, that they just go, hey, if you grew to 10, we're going to bill you for the entirety of 10. And the math on that just you may, like, people may have heard me talk about this before, but the math on that is very simple. It's if for every $1,000 of margin you're making at the moment, that would increase to about 1150. Okay, so it's fairly negligible. It's not wild, especially across all the customers where the changes are. And you know your customers. Maybe you can't do that to every client, but if that's the general path, you make a little bit more, and it actually makes it a lot simpler for the team to manage. And when it's really under control, I think when things are under control, you can start adding in new systems and new processes to improve upon it. But if it's a bit of the Wild West at the moment, it's a small change that can actually like just de-stress the whole month-end process, especially around Microsoft, because they're really the only ones that prorate on, except for BCDR on Datto. Like,
Yeah, there's not much proration.
There's not many.
What you just described there with the mid-month stuff and changing when we do some things, what immediately came to my mind is this gets infinitely more difficult, the fact that we're so determined to have one invoice go out to the client.
True.
It's a very old school way of thinking. Is whether we send one, whether we send 5, whether we send 10 doesn't actually really matter. But we seem to care a lot more about everything needs to go on that one monthly invoice. When you scratch the surface, yeah, we might send a monthly invoice that has all this stuff wrapped up, whether it's bundled or not, doesn't matter. But we're often sending project invoices. We're often sending invoices for the hardware and services we sold. We actually send out more invoices anyway. So I don't know why we get so caught up in separating out our SaaS subscriptions and sending an invoice that's clear and transparent on, like what you described, 14th, 15th of the month, and saying to the clients, this is just how it works. We're simplifying it as much as we can. We're sending you a start of the month invoice is for our recurring services. You'll get one in the middle of the month for all your SaaS subscriptions, and then you'll get these other ones. It doesn't create the client much extra work because it's all electronic now. It can all flow through into the systems. Even with approval processes, these monthly ones are already approved either way. So it's not actually creating as much work and as much stress as we assume, because we make assumptions for a lot of these things.
And it's a really valid point, actually. One of the things I missed here and why it's still colored in is if you do have a managed services type of arrangement device or user base, that's like, you absolutely should build that out at the first. It's generally the highest revenue part of a business, or certainly hopefully trending that way. And then having a separate optionality, having a separate invoice that goes out to the client, which is all of your recurring costs and all of your recurring revenue. So if there's an issue with one or the other, it's also not holding up the whole thing being paid.
That's a great point. And I was just thinking, as you're saying that too, Adam, you could twist this. Let's move to mid-month billing, and let's say we still want to get the single bill out. Well, instead of billing your managed services in arrear or for that month, bill it in advance. So on the 15th of August, we're billing for arrears for the SaaS subscriptions. We're actually billing on the 15th of August for the September bill. Yes, there's some accounting magic that we need to do, but all of a sudden our cash flow is actually better because we're ahead.
Yeah.
And so this is where we just need to think differently. And there's no one single right answer in all of this, but it is thinking about cash flow better. It is thinking about what do we need to do for the clients, and be more transparent, and make sure we're capturing the right costs and stuff. We don't. Yeah. We're so stuck in our old way of how we used to do break fix.
Yeah, and I think there are certainly MSPs where I had a conversation with one this morning that was like crucial that they sent their invoices out on the 27th, so they could just do accrual accounting around it. And they were also buying from packs, so I was just like, if that's the case, right, the complexity with that always is you've got a 27th invoice going to the customer of current counts. You've then got an invoice arriving essentially 10 days later, reporting up until the end of the month. So there's a 3-day moving window where the data is just never going to potentially align or wouldn't align. And that it's picking the battles if they have to do that, if there's no way of changing things whatsoever. I think it's just more understanding where the complexity exists because of that mismatch of the timing. And the further you're away from the invoice coming from the supplier when you're billing out, the larger that chance, of course, for things to move, add and change and all the rest of it. It just makes it a little bit more complex every day. And when I say complex, it's more complex to go, we just want to make sure that all of our costs are tracked and we're making money across everything. There's loads more changes that are going on incrementally throughout that. So yeah, option one or option two, there isn't one single answer that I think will fit for everyone. But if this is a tricky thing, it might be worthwhile considering adjusting the timing slightly.
The other solution to this, Adam, like we talked, let's use the 7% revenue leakage, is charge 7% more, and not even dive into this level of detail and solve it. Like there is, to our point, there's different ways to solve these challenges. You as a tech partner need to understand what your actual challenges is and what you're trying to achieve first, to then come up with the right solution. And we're not we snooker ourselves more than the situations that we're actually in. Most of the time we're creating our own worst situations because we keep going too tactical to solve point in time symptoms rather than take a step back and understand the bigger picture. And that's the same as price rises, that a lot of people aren't raising prices because of those mistakes or things that we haven't thought about. And it just all adds up, and it's impacting the business more and more. It's only going to get worse.
We just had another question on how do you monitor GP when a recon for Microsoft licensing can carry over several months. It's a tricky question to answer with one just blanket answer. And the reason why I say that is every distributor and the way they bill and the timings that they bill, plus which PSA you run, factor into the exact bullseye how you would truly solve that. So if you could welcome to drop us an email afterwards, just adam@cloudolive.com, and we can look through exactly what it is that your variables in that equation, and can give you how we would best get as close as possible. There are just some inherent limitations within some of the PSAs that go, if you update this cost, that's it. That's the cost. There's one cost for the month. There's no prorating cost mid-month. So it's like, you can't is one answer, or you need to blend an average over a period of time and bake that in, which is you sort of playing God a little bit in the middle of this thing, which we try not to do as much as possible. But if it's a negligible little change in that, you might go, okay, I understand there's it's slightly off on that. I'll deal with it in my accounting package. Or you go, no, I want a bullseye in the PSA, which is very reasonable. That you'd likely have to, because take an audit house, right? They can only take one number for that given month from a cost or revenue perspective. So if you want an average or you want multiple, you can't. So it has to be blended into that. I can't give you one answer, right? But I'm sure there's a way. I'd be like, depending on your variables, I'd be like, this is the closest you can possibly get to a good, like your best outcome there.
It's worth mentioning just off that sort of example. Hey, so there's so many variables. And we've been talking about how disties bill on different timings and stuff like that. Disties as well face the same problem we do. And they're trying to consolidate their billing down from all these sporadic vendors down into one bill for us, and they've got the challenges. So a lot of it starts at the vendor level. They just create whatever they want without understanding the industry. And we just keep pushing the problems further and further down without truly solving it. So it's not just the disty pushing it down to us. They're dealing with the same problems on the other side.
So true. That's so true. Yeah, and that, like, Paxet, I think, have done the best job in consolidating onto one invoice, which now creates a really big problem because there's arrears one time. annual, like everything's in one place. So we by default now break them out into either different product lines, or we might do, I just want the one times, I just want the monthlies, I just want the arrears as an example, or the Azure related things. All of those are segmented into their own world, so you can isolate them down. So it's almost like great for consolidation onto one invoice. Let's break it out into its own world so you can see where the problems maybe exist. Very quickly, right? If this is an area that you would like CloudOlive and our experience to maybe help you out with, just scan that, get in touch with the team, and we can, if you're a current client, right, you should be doing this, right? The RRP, we should help you. You can bulk update things, or at least review it before you choose to do it, and we can help you with that. There's a QR code to get you started. And there's you can talk through this, James, if you wouldn't mind.
You just scan the QR codes and put your credit card details, and you'll be fine. You can trust me. What's up on the screen is a whole bunch of free resources and stuff that you can get from all the stuff that I'm doing. So if you're not sick of hearing me ramble on in this session, there's plenty of other content around a lot of different topics that you can access for free, and just go where you want and see what's helpful.
Yeah, cool. And I would say definitely follow James on LinkedIn. He's very prominent and good to read the stuff that he puts out there. Very meaningful, non-AI generated stuff is what I'd say.
I think spelling mistakes and all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way. That's the key these days. I mean, if there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in now. We appreciate those who have asked and everyone who's taken the time to join the call. We get it's a tricky problem, but like really solvable as well. It's even one of the other things that came up yesterday was just like, cool, we can update the current contracts, but what about our product list, which is disconnected from that, and it's part of the quoting and it's going to create future problems coming forward. Like there's another layer to it, but I'd say bite one thing off at a time and do that well and fix it. And the one that you want to get right is the RRP where I want it to be on an individual service per client. Definitely the right place to start. That's your revenue, and then backfill the other areas after that.
And the final thought I'd leave off with this is don't start with the tactical problems. Be aware that this is a much bigger exercise, and not just because it's the complexity. Actually, it goes back to what I was talking before. It's actually a significant revenue line in our business. It's a profit center. If we start thinking about it as a profit center, how we approach these problems are very different compared to, it's just a finance admin problem in the corner. Because it's not just that. It's actually a whole of business function. It goes from sales and marketing through to service delivery and project delivery and compliance, and it goes through to finance. It touches the whole business, and it generates a significant amount of profits. So if we start treating like that, then we can start solving these problems more holistically.
Cool. Nice way to finish. Thank you everyone for your time, and get in touch. Look forward to chatting with you all very soon. Appreciate it, James. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Adam. It was a great chat.
Cheers, guys. Bye.